Good morning. We have Monday, the 3rd of March, and today we are celebrating the Global Omega-3 Day. So Global Omega-3 Day is every year, and it's on this date, March the 3rd. And this date was chosen to highlight the importance of omega-3 fatty acids, and particularly EPA and DHA, supporting heart, brain, and also eye health, and etc. And we will also today talk a little bit about why it's healthy during pregnancy. And the Global Organization for EPA and DHA, omega-3s, is called GOED, Global Organization for EPA and DHA. And they established this day to raise awareness about the benefits of these omega-3 fatty acids, and for us to encourage you to take more omega-3. So our talk today will also be why we need more omega-3 today than we did yesterday, and also why we need more omega-3 tomorrow than we do today. And that's a fact, and we will cover also that. Today on our health talk, I have with me Eric Alexander Richter. So good morning, Eric.
Good morning. I was just watching this sheet and it says omega-3/2025, right?
Yes.
So it's a date, but it is also a very good 0303. And I think
Yeah.
not
That,
just on that day, not just today, we have to have awareness on that. Because,
good
90%, if not more people are lacking omega-3. But it'll be a nice talk. And so many more people should know this.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. 0303, omega-3 2025. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't see it. You're smarter than me.
I
Yeah.
take a lot of that stuff, it works. No, but yeah,
So,
I mean, yeah, that's the omega-3. It looks like it. So I think they didn't pick this on accident. But let's talk about so many people missing these vital omega-3 fats, and then they ask, should we take this every day? Should we take this all life long? And actually, why should they start? I mean, that's what you just mentioned. Why do we need more tomorrow than we do need it today? What's your vision on that?
well, they are a pair of nutrients, and they are found in every cell of our bodies to help us to perform our very best, every hour, every day, 24/7. And that's mostly EPA and DHA, omega-3s. But the problem is that 90% of people worldwide are not getting enough of these nutrients. So the Global Omega-3 Day will maybe shine a spotlight on these important nutrients, and we will help to make people understand even more for optimal health. So that's why we have this call today, to enlighten ourselves.
Yeah, here we see some what we call the modern diet imbalance. You can see the not wild grown salmon on the front with the big thick white lines. That's not the healthiest one as it used to be. The avocado is fine. A lot of people think from linseed oil you can produce your own EPA DHA. Unfortunately, that's only good for a very small amount of people. We need more. Eating nuts is fine, but if you go nuts on eating nuts, then you may really get too much. Best probably would be the walnuts. And then I think the two bottles in the back are a little bit, they could potentially be the dangerous ones if they are highly processed, but we get back to that later.
Yeah,
But
maybe the picture is not so. When you look at it, it's confusing because
yeah,
it says imbalance. But for
well,
me,
maybe it's olive oil, and then
yeah,
that could
this
be good.
this looks very balanced and good.
Yeah,
So, but we choose this picture maybe because in the bottles you might have some seed oils, or yeah, it can be olive oil, which is good. Seed oils might not be as good, and we will talk more about that.
and that also generates the confusion because a lot of people then, or like in English, we call it vegetable oils, but the seed oils have nothing to do with vegetables. And so therefore it's better to take olive oil, and the meat that makes the biggest difference. The meat of the whatever source of the oil, or the seed. And the seeds are, and that's the seed need that omega-6, otherwise it wouldn't be in there. But if we take too much of it, it's probably not that good. And if I look at my next sheet, I this is you wonder why we still need the awareness. This is from 23 years ago.
Yeah.
And you can really see that the Western diets, and this is so long ago, that's 15, 16 times more omega-6 than 3, where it shouldn't be any more than 5-1, or even preferably 1-1 if you want to go for the best of the best. But at max 5-1, and it's clear the last part says here, and has excessive amounts of omega-6. So that controls kind of processes, but I think this is another process we never thought about.
Yeah. Well, we are because of, well, first of all, we can say that omega-6 is an essential fatty acid, and we need it. Of course, we need to have the essential fatty acid. Another one, there is only two. The other one is omega-3. So omega-6 are, when you have too many of them, it's inflammatory. And then omega-3 is the opposite. It's part of an inflammatory diet when you have omega-3. And actually in 1911, we started to extract with, chemically, omega-6 oils from seeds, and they contain a lot. They are very inflammatory because they have so much omega-6 in them. This started in 1911. And now they are so inexpensive or cheap to buy, and we use them in our food to make the food, and in all kind of fast food. And we also are feeding the animals we eat with these oils. So we put in omega-6 and grains, and then the animals, they also get this diet which is very high in omega-6. And that is causing maybe some problems. At least it's promoting inflammation, chronic inflammation.
You can see in the beginning, when this was introduced with the chemical extraction, it wasn't even that bad. But then after the war, once we started eating too much, not you and me, but like, let's say the average American population in the 50s, and at once you see this curve going up with the seed oils, and parallel cardiovascular disease. And then Roosevelt said, let's end this cardiovascular disease and find the solution. And then everybody had to absolutely work their butt off to find it. And this very, very smart guy, Ansel Keys, actually, he said, he picked a lot of countries, I think it were 22, and then from there he took a smaller amount of them and said, if people have cardiovascular disease or heart disease, it's about the cholesterol. But at that time, we didn't know much about cholesterol and all the difficult particles, different particles, I have to say. And then the industry actually took over. Time magazine put his face in the front of his magazine and said, oh, this must be the solution. And then the whole industry said, okay, let's get rid of the butter and the lard, which is actually really healthy. It's coming back again.
Yeah.
And let's now push these seed oils. And then they had to produce so much, then it became genetically modified. It became too oxidized. It had to look beautifully gold color. And now we're actually adding toxins in the body that takes everything out of control. And this then in the end causes this inflammatory stress.
If you go back again, Eric, I just want to mention, because you had the older, darker red curve going parallel with the consumption of the omega-6 oils. So these polyunsaturated fatty acids are, as we said, too high in omega-6 and inflammatory. So what they actually do, they are damaging the lining of the blood vessels, and then affecting oral circulation and blood flow. And here is the point: increasing the risk for heart disease and maybe diabetes, because they create, like you said, dangerous oxidized form of bad LDL. So it's part of an inflammatory diet causing chronic inflammation, and type 2 diabetes was discovered in 1938, but that's when it became a bigger problem. More and more people got it. And then what is really causing type 2 diabetes? Is it the sugar and the starch and all these things, or is it something else? So maybe you want to touch base that, but it's
Well, it's interesting what you say here. There's two things. First of all, once we started focusing on the cholesterol, the people started to get cholesterol lowering medication like statin drugs. And we know that, let's say, at ages like 50 plus, that if you take those statin drugs, you kind of double your risk on diabetes. So that could be partly there. But there is something else, and I think we have to put stress on that later on in the talk. Once we started to get all those diseases, the only one to blame was the food. But we can say, parallel to these curves at the same time, yes, the food is bad, but we also stopped moving.
yeah,
We got cars. Just think
yeah,
about if you live in Texas, and then they don't even have bicycles, basically. Everything they do is by car. Every single movement they do by car. So
totally
if
agree.
you
Totally
if
agree.
you lose your muscle mass,
Yeah,
then there is no way you can
yeah,
store your glycogen, which comes from the glucose you eat, from the fruits and bread, whatever you do. And if you cannot store it in the muscle anymore, then where does it go? It's going to be stored in the liver as fat. And then your triglycerides go up. And if the triglycerides go up,
yeah.
because of lack of exercise, now
Yes, I
people
agree.
start to develop diabetes. And you can see even in this sheet, we increase the inflammatory stress because we do not move, and we combine it with stuff that they call food in the supermarket, but in real life, it isn't food. And we can see even this leads to a dramatic impact on our brain health. If you lack exercise, you cannot keep your brain healthy. That's impossible, no matter what you eat. Now, you can make it worse by eating more of these oxidized seed oils and get stressed. If I look into, I can
Yeah,
say my country, the Netherlands, but there's probably more European countries right now. 1 out of 3 women develops dementia. It's incredible. 1 out of 7 men, 1 out of 3 women. It is a tsunami of this. So that's not a genetic thing because it's kind of doubling within this current generation. It's going to double. Yes, we have more.
but maybe isn't it in your country then, Eric? Because we had this slide, 90% of people are lacking omega-3,
Yeah.
and when we know that the brain, in the brain, you have 60% is fat, or at least 25% is
Well,
DHA.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
then when you consume DHA, it's actually food for the brain.
But look at this thing, this enhanced cognitive mental health demands. I mean, the stress we have today. I can even go one sheet back. This increased inflammatory stress. Now, let's say I have an inflammation going on in my liver or not in my brain, but I need to solve it, otherwise you potentially could die. So where is your biggest storage of omega-3? This is in the brain, and the brain can, even during like pregnancy, can donate omega-3s below and then sacrifice the brain basically to make sure you don't die in below. And this, of course, leads to much faster aging and cumulative cellular stress, especially in the brain, especially with the younger people. Now, up to ages like 25, 30, you see a dramatic impact what it does on mental health today. I mean, we have had talks specifically on that topic.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you look at the a little bit the life cycle, I'll skip the first maybe 40, 50 years, but this is how it looks like right now. There are in kind of in a cycle. It's called the development of sarcopenic obesity. Now, what is that? People get heavier, and parallel, they lose muscle mass. And by looking at what I mentioned before, we always blame the food. So they say, oh, let's go on a diet. But if they diet, what do? They eat less, but they also don't exercise. So they lose not so much the fat, but they lose the muscle mass. And if they lose the muscle mass and they start eating normal again, they gain weight at double the speed. So this is how you develop obesity and a lack of muscle, which is sarcopenia. And these muscles are highly, highly important to produce tons of important hormones. We'll get back to that later. So on the right top, you can see because of the extra fat filled with the omega-6 fats, the seed oils in the cells get a lot of stress. They produce these markers, this TNF alpha, which is an inflammatory marker, a CRP, interleukin 6, which is an interesting substance because if you do a lot of sports, you produce it, and that's good for you. But if you're having a passive lifestyle, it's bad for you. Then myostatin, what is it? Myosteatosis, that blocks the growth of your muscle. So you have the oxidative stress, you develop myostatin hormones in your system that shrinks the muscle, and you become leptin resistant. What you do need is sleep well, exercise, and with that you generate growth hormone, IGF-1, growth factors, testosterone, estrogen, adiponectin to avoid diabetes. Here you go. And if you're low in adiponectin, your risk of diabetes goes up as well. So stopping the exercise lowers these important hormones and raises the bad ones. And now the struggle starts.
That's the recipe for healthy aging, my friend.
Yeah, well, the opposite. This is the bad aging. I mean, you need those hormones: the growth hormone, IGF-1, testosterone, adiponectin, estrogen, for healthy aging. Otherwise, you just run in this whole picture, and I don't even have to explain it because I think it looks pretty clear what is going on there. Quality of life is just bad. And if we would just simply say, let's take more omega-3 and exercise.
Yeah,
it's never the omega-3 on its own.
Then you have, we see the countries in the world where the index is the highest: Japan, Iceland, South Korea, and then they have found that if your index is more than 8%, you are reducing the risk for cardiovascular disease. You are living longer. And then they found also that there is many studies, and we will maybe talk a little bit about some of them. But if you don't have enough omega-3, you lose 5 years of aging, of healthy aging.
And that's what it's all. It's not about hanging around longer. It's about living longer in a healthier life. That's what we want, right?
Yeah.
So eating mackerel is actually the fish with the highest amount of omega-3 per 100 gram of fish. That's very good. It's probably much better than the farmed salmon, but you still need to go catch the fish yourself or do some additional exercise.
In Norway, we have this canned mackerel, and it's 100 gram, and you get actually on the 100 gram in this can, you get 3 grams of omega-3.
Yes,
so
it's the highest. It's the fattiest fish out there, and it tastes good. But here we have the index 2004, new risk factor for that, for coronary heart disease. Of course, there is many more reasons to die, not just your heart. That's always a balance. It's the same as with the cholesterol. If your cholesterol is very high and oxidized due to lack of omega-3, you have a high risk for cardiovascular or coronary heart disease. If your cholesterol is in a very healthy state and non-oxidized, and you don't have the small, dense LDL particles, then it's totally fine, because the large, fluffy ones are good. And what the study here says, if your omega-3 index is higher than 8%, this is associated with a greater cardioprotection. It's totally clear. And the lack of it, less than 4%, is associated with less health or more disease, whatever you like.
Eric, just interesting to talk a little, just very short, because you're talking about not only the LDL, but the oxidized LDL.
Yes.
So what is oxidizing the LDL? Is it the sugar, the carbs, or is it lack of omega-3?
Well, you have to see this. You have these particles, and they can be HDL, high density lipoprotein, or intermediate, or very low, or LDL. But there is at least 7 different particles in LDL. And so they're very functional. But if you have the small, dense particles, first of all, they are so small they can go into the lineage of the blood vessels and go through it. That's how small they are, and then cause damage in the inside. So that is this first thing. But let's say this. Let's say you eat a bag of potato chips. We know they are fried at a very high temperature, so they are oxidized. They have lots of acrylamides. Or let's go back to the plant, the seed oils we spoke before. If they're oxidized and they're transported in the same molecules as the cholesterol, because LDL is a low density lipoprotein carrying cholesterol, and LDL on its own has a lot of cholesterol, but it is not cholesterol. It's a transport vesicle. But if I stuff a lot of oxidized fats in there, then what happens with the LDL? It gets oxidized as well. And now it becomes dangerous. Okay. But we do know that if your omega-3 index is like 8% or higher, and I've tested it on myself, your what we call lipid peroxidation goes down and your oxidized LDL goes down as well. So that's protective. Even if your LDL goes up by taking omega-3, but the quality improves, now you will live longer, because the lower your LDL, the higher the risk for cancer. Right? So it needs to be balanced. It shouldn't be sky high. It shouldn't be oxidized. But if it's a normal level and it has the right of omega-3s going along in the same particles, then you're completely fine. Let's not even mention the lutein. But, they tested this. This Swiss study came out lately.
It's interesting, this, Eric. Sorry, but it says omega, like it's a big surprise. Then it says omega-3 supplements seems to slow down biological aging. Like, this is something very new. But this study was particularly good because it was on older people, and that was
they waited until age 70 till 91, and this is done exactly 1 month ago, the 3rd of February. It was released, I have to say, published.
Yeah.
But they did it for a couple years. Here you go.
Yeah. So they followed 777 people for 3 years. And then the group of participants that had 1 gram of omega-3 with vitamin D3, they lived 1 month longer every year. So more than or 3 months longer. Healthy life.
To be a bit more accurate, it is not like they lived longer, because it was not like they did a study over that many years, but it was like you can check the biological age with your genetic clock, the length of the telomeres, and there's a bunch of other parameters, different ways. So what they did is they checked all these people, and all of them on the calendar aged 3 years. That's what the study took. But then the ones with the high amount of omega-3, purely omega-3, they didn't biologically age 3 years, but 2 years and 9 months. So they saved themselves on the bio clock 3 months by just omega-3. If you would only take the vitamin D3, not much would change. If you only would do exercise, you'll probably be very healthy, but it doesn't change the bio clock. Okay, but here is an interesting. Now you take the 3 together, the exercise, the D3, and the omega-3, and the benefit wasn't just 1 month per year, but it was, I don't know, 1.5 or 2 months per year. I have to look it up again. But that is, so it's the bio clock. That means your cells have 3 more months at least in functionality before losing function because the telomeres came too short. So that makes it very interesting.
It was actually 4 years then. So, 4 months. So they got additional 10-15% more or slower aging.
And then there is, and because the exercising group, they did 30 minutes, 3 days a week. And I would say you could even better do 50 minutes every day than 30 minutes 3 times a week. But it was interesting. And there is lots of studies here that show that, of course, exercise is always good. You get stronger bones, stronger muscles. We have seen before that if you have more muscle mass, it's easier to maintain a healthy weight. and you can produce these anti-inflammatory hormones and block the pro-inflammatory ones. But I found this one. Look, exercise hormones, nothing to do with omega-3. Exercise hormones reduce Alzheimer's plaque in brain. And it had to be resistance training. Yes, walking, swimming, cycling, it's all very good for your cardiovascular health. But for the brain, it says do the resistance training. We kind of know that because we always promote that we don't sell oil, but we offer people health, and the health comes together with the exercise. But this is where you can see what it does. The physical exercise, now I see these people running, but it's not relaxed running. It's more like high intensity interval training. And you do this is really intense, and then your liver and your muscles start to produce a ton of all kind of hormones. And then with the muscle, you can see these myokines from myofibroblast and then from the muscle. And then you see irisin, this interleukin 6 I mentioned before. Now it's a positive one. CTSB, I don't know what that is. And lactate is like a super antioxidant. This goes through the blood-brain barrier. And then on the square on the right top, you can see it improves synaptic plasticity, hippocampal volume, that's your central processor, neurogenesis in there, of course, then the things start to work better, and lower neuroinflammation. And there's another one below the 4 in the right corner. You can see more BDNF. That's brain-derived neurotrophic factor. That's what makes the hippocampus grow. But to exercise all these hormones into effect, to bring them into effect, you do need omega-3 DHA. So the DHA on its own is good for your biological clock. But if you combine it with this kind of exercise, now 1 + 1 is not 2, but probably 3 or 4. Stronger muscles, less inflammation, healthier heart due to the exercise, and your brain will be fit because of all these hormones you produce. This is the solution. This is what everybody should do within ecology. Be physical fit, take the products, and not just the omega-3, also collagen, very important for your bone health, also the K2D3, and maybe even the energy booster, because the whole package is what it does.
Yeah, I totally agree. Just want to say that any exercise also will have some or very good impact on hormones, and you have dopamine, endorphins, noradrenaline, serotonin, and so on. So my point is, you can walk, you can take the stairs and these things, and that also will have good impact on your health.
But you know what wonders me? Yeah, the stairs is very good. You're training with your own body weight. But do you know what wonders me is why do they wait until people are 70 years old, already lost a lot of muscle, and then start doing this? Because just imagine if you would be 40 and you would do the same 3 times a week exercise, you have much more muscle mass. So these myokines will be much better. And then the effect will probably be way more interesting instead of waiting until people are already.
Just a point on that, Eric, because it's when we study with people above 70 years old, it's a very, very good positive study, and the information that came out, because I just read and then I talked about it also, because they did this research with a Swiss bank, and then they took the most wealthy clients and they asked them how much longer, or how much of your wealth are you willing to pay to live 1 year longer or something. And more than 50% say I will pay more than half of my fortune to get 1 more year. So you can imagine, just by taking omega-3, and even more if you do some exercise, then you get 10-15% slower.
Basically, these people are very wealthy. They're all millionaires and more, like multimillionaires, and they're willing to give up half of their wealth, so probably millions of euros or whatever currency, just to live 1 year longer. So if they take omega-3 for 10 years, you already would have a full year. And 10 years doesn't cost you 1 million. It's costing you like €1 or 2 a day. So we have to find these millionaires and explain them that we have the solution for their wish.
Yeah.
But here you see again, and this is the thing, they have to exercise. DHA, dietary supplementation, enhances the effect of exercise on synaptic plasticity and cognition. Okay. So what we know is a lot of studies done with of course, you can do it with mice or with rats. Pro-brain-derived neurotrophic levels were much higher in the exercised rats fed the DHA diet versus the passive animals. So it's the combination of exercise and DHA. And I just mentioned, Barra, why wait until you're 70? You could do it way earlier. Why
Yeah.
not -7 or minus a year before you plan to have children? Let me quickly go this to keep it a little short.
Yeah.
The effect of paternal diet on spermatogenesis and offspring health. So if the planet father takes more omega-3, and by the way, K2 has a very beneficial effect as well, he will get healthier and more sperm cells. That's one. So if I have a healthier father with healthier sperm cells, quite likely the children will benefit for this. This goes so far, here you have a proof, that if they need to freeze these sperm cells, just whatever reason, for children in the future, let's say the husband develops testicle cancer, and then they say let's take the sperm cells out, freeze them, and then keep them for whatever when the woman wants to become pregnant. And now here you can see that they add DHA to the person to make the testes as healthy as anywhere possible, to have the healthiest sperm cells, to make sure the DNA integrity is perfect, and they can keep it for much longer. So, but if you don't need to freeze dry it or need to freeze it, what about taking the DHA anyway for your healthy sperm cells? And that's not just for the man. A little girl, and this is a topic on its own. I think we can do a whole lecture on this.
Yeah. Sure.
Little girls, when they're born, they have all the eggs. They're already in the body when the mom of them is still pregnant from them. So they're born with hundreds of thousands of eggs. Then they lose them. That goes very fast. Okay. But some will last even when they're still ovulating, but the quality became less. So they become less fertile, although they're still there because of chaotic cell division. Now, you don't produce new ones, but it is just the maintenance of the cell on its own. Okay. So even if you implant donor egg cells from younger women in older women, older between brackets, let's say 40 years, they can still get healthy children, but without not. But here's the trick. If they would take omega-3 on a very early age, first of all, the lifespan of these egg cells will be much better, even if they haven't done it before they want to get pregnant on whatever age and it doesn't work. If they take omega-3, chances for getting pregnant go up really seriously. So now I have a healthier sperm cell, a healthier egg cell, and it really improves the chance of getting pregnant. That's first. I won't go too deep. We'll do a different topic on that. And then during the pregnancy, because of the omega-3, what it says here, maternal intake of omega-3 polyunsaturated fatty acid during pregnancy is associated with a differential methylation. What does that mean, methylation? Because that's how you program your DNA. So mothers who take a higher amount of omega-3 will have children less likely to develop obesity, type 2 diabetes, and even high blood pressure. And there's many more, but I'll keep that for the next one.
One point, Eric, that I'm reminded of when you talk, because the most dangerous year to live, or when you have the highest risk of dying, is your first year. Then we're talking about infant mortality.
First day even. No.
Yeah.
True.
So infant mortality rate, and the people that have the more omega-3, or not the people, but
omega-3
if
index.
you have more omega-3 when you're born, then the rate of infant mortality also goes down. So that's what we also see. And maybe it's starting already on this level, not only when the mother is pregnant, but maybe even before.
I say we'll do a whole topic on that. But it's totally interesting. Let's give him a kickstart and a good start. I mean, that's what we want, right?
Yeah.
So there is a lot of health research ton of it, and the more we bring together, the better it is. Healthier people for many more years, and we need to test. Just don't guess, test, right? And
Yeah.
and all the 3 tests are relevant to make sure you have the best. And make sure for the women always to make sure you have plenty of folic acid, but not the regular folic acid, but the tetrahydrofolate, the one we have in our energy boost, because the other ones, in many cases, they just don't work.
Yeah.
Anything to add?
No, I just will say make a plan to get more EPA and DHA into your body. And yeah, also maybe commit a little bit to eat fatty fish as a meal 2 times per week, maybe. That will be a good decision. So yeah, and then I think we can say thank you for listening, and thank you for choosing health, and thank you to you, Eric, for all your information that you shared.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and I wish everybody a very healthy March, and God knows, start. Don't wait, just start. Thank you.
Thank you.